The Indifferent Stars by Daniel James Brown. Stick around. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to Three Rivers Books. My name is John. So what we're talking about is the Donner Party. If you're not familiar with the Donner Party, we're going to get into this book. This is a first-person narrative from Daniel James Brown. Obviously, the Donner Party was in the around 1845. This is a story about Sarah Graves. Sarah Graves was, I believe, the daughter of about a dozen kids. Her father, family, everybody that lived in Illinois. They were a farming culture. They were hardy people. There were no roads. We're talking about 1845, pre-1900s. All right, so there's no internet. There's no mode of travel other than cart. There's horses, there's boats. Everybody lived basically whatever they can grow from their farm. There wasn't a lot of money to be had, but there was always good folk, good Christian people, that kind of thing. And the book starts off where the author starts following this person's progress, Sarah Graves. All right, now Sarah Graves at the time was, I believe, 16 years old. She falls in love with the boy next door. They get married before the trip. Now the trip is the most interesting part of the story. She's not part of, or she's not a Donner. The Donner Party was named after the cannibalism and the story where there's a whole bunch of cannibalism, and there is a lot of cannibalism in this book. What I want you to be prepared for if you decide to get this book is the hardship from moving from Illinois to California over the Sierra Nevada, through the desert, through the muck-infested place in wagons with horses. Everything that you carried, it's not like you can go to 7-Eleven. Everything that you carried had to be in your cart. They sold their farm from Illinois and went 1,600 miles on foot, oxen, and cart with the whole entire family. Just imagine that. Now, you and I, it's very simple. We just get in a plane, we fly over, we could take a train, probably take a couple days, maybe even, I-80 or I-95, get on there a couple days, and we're in California. And almost nobody, and this took them months. And the biggest issue that they had, and I'm not going to give you too many spoilers, but there was a gentleman named Lansford Hastings. Now, Hastings is kind of a swindler, kind of an entrepreneur, makes a ton of bad decisions. He's known in history. This is actually a history book. Hastings said that instead of going the Oregon Trail, which is the most safest, you can go through these mountains. And if you go through these mountains, you will cut, 300 miles off your trip. Now, for somebody that has to travel 1,600 miles to get through there, that's a pretty good, swath of land that they don't have to worry about. However, he never went. It was never tested. And you're talking about oxen and carts and children and dogs through a pass, Donner's Pass, that has never been cut, cultivated, or anything else. So when they finally got to this path in the road, 87 of these travelers decided to take that pass. And that was the worst decision they could ever make. Now, all through the getting from Illinois to this pass, or the breakup point where you can either take the Oregon Trail or take the pass, there was forts along the way where people can stop, buy trail goods, that kind of thing. Some people sold their farms. They did have a lot of silver, so silver and gold was still a thing. Nobody used paper currency. There was a lot of barter, that kind of thing. It was a different time than it is now today. All right, they didn't have GPS. They had to ask for directions. They had to navigate. They did have a compass, so compass was still a thing. So compasses were used. They had to rely heavily on guides. There were a lot of Indians in the area. Indians going through that much brush and thick. Mostly were not hostile. They were more interested in trade. However, a lot of them did steal from them. So some horses went missing, some oxen went missing. And you got to think about an oxen or a horse as your main transportation. Not to mention the fact that now what you have in your wagons is what you have to survive on for the next couple months. All right, so that's pretty desolate. They finally get to this part where there is the split off, and I will say that a lot of people, said, "Hey, listen, this is probably not a good idea." But again, Hastings had people that he pushed this. All right. Now, it did say in the book, and it was a travel book that Hastings put out, the Guide to California. You could probably look it up or still look it up. And what it did was he was a salesman. All right. The guy never traveled the route. But again, he had people out there that said, "Hey, listen, if you take my route, you can, you'll be there in half the time." So what happened? These people, these poor people, these 87 people, out of 87 people, only 47 of them made it. They got to the point where they got snowed in. Now, the book did say that, hey, listen, try to get before the heavy snowfall. And I don't know if you know much about the Sierra Nevada. I'm not from California. Donner's Lake, or where they wound up getting bogged in, snowed up to 18 inches. 18 inches. There's pictures in here where they show where they were cutting wood or felling wood. They were felling logs. Okay, so this is Donner's Lake right here at the top. And they were felling logs. These are the logs right here at the 18 foot mark. 18 foot. So it snowed 18 feet. So where they built their little cabins or lean-tos or shanties, they were underground. The only way to get out of the snow or out of their little makeshift shanties were to dig up a tunnel. Now, here's what happened. The worst part of this book, and this is all about Sarah, is that Sarah, like I said, got married. She didn't have any children, but her and I believe 8 or 9 companions, the most healthy of the bunch, knew that they were going to starve to death. They decided to go to the Johnson Ranch. The Johnson Ranch was on the California side. It was through the mountains, down into the valley, and at the Johnson Ranch, they knew that they had salvation. They didn't have a compass. They didn't have any food. What they had was they were butchering any oxen or any type of farm animal that they could find and bringing that food with them. The snow was very high. They created snowshoes. They didn't have snowshoes. They didn't have good technology like we have today. We have sleeping bags. We have ultralight. We have puffy jackets that, could withstand 0 degrees. They had linen and wool. Most of them didn't even have moccasins. All right. They finally get to halfway there. They're starving to death, and they call it the Camp of Death. The Camp of Death is where they first start eating people. All right, they draw lots to see who would die first, and if anybody died first, they were thinking about shooting somebody and then eating them. But they decided that they would just wait until somebody actually died and then cut them up. All right, so I know this is kind of gruesome or grim, but just imagine the psychological effect. There's one part in the book where Sarah's husband finally does die, and most of this is due to exposure. They're traveling to try to get to this ranch. They're totally lost in the woods. There's snow coming in, and her husband says, "I can't go anymore." So she lays down with her husband in the snow. They cuddle up. He dies, and as she's walking away, she runs into another party, and another party sees him and says, "Hey, can we eat him?" Okay, that's how desperate things are. She's sitting by the fireside trying to stay warm. And that was one of the rules, was that you wouldn't eat your own kin. All right, hopefully. And what they did was they took his heart and organs and started roasting them by the fire that they had. So her husband that just died is now watching her companions eat his heart and liver by the fire that they're all sitting at. That's how desperate it is. They finally get rescued by some Indians and finally make it to the ranch. Once they get to the ranch, they have to do a rescue party. Everybody's emancipated, like skin and bone. People thought they were zombies. They couldn't hunt any game. They were just ill prepared. It took 3 rescue parties to try to get back to Donna's Lake. And every time they got there, they took a couple children, a couple people with them. But again, they got bogged in again and again and again. They were running out of supplies. Even the rescue parties were having trouble because they put food at a cache and the bears got into it. By the 3rd time, they had 2 mountain men try to rescue at least 3 kids, 3 children that were still left at the lake. So they were going back and forth from the lake, and they dropped them off there. The youngest died, and the person in the cabin, coldly calculating, said, well, at least, the youngest died. We're going to go string them up and eat them. All right, that's how horrible it is. Could you imagine eating your 3-year-old child or your 3-year-old son or your 3-year-old brother? That is insane. That is what this book is. This is the heart-wrenching book you will ever read about survival. If you are somebody that wants to take a trek into the woods, into the mountains. Now, granted, we do have a lot of different technologies that they didn't have back then. We have foods that last forever. We have better socks, better boots, better navigation, communication. People get lost in the mountains all the time. They call somebody up and search and rescue's on the way. We have helicopters, all right? So that being said, out of the 48, 27 survived. They all went on to live different lives. A lot of them didn't live very long. Back in those days, in the 1800s, people didn't live that long anyway. Sarah wound up dying at 47 after getting married for the 3rd time. She married a couple different people. The last person she married was a farmer, and of course she had more children. But again, back then, things were a whole lot different. And if you want a heart-wrenching, survival-esque, a survival book to learn from, this is it. The Donner Party eating their people is 100% true. There are other stories and case studies where I think it was a rugby team that went down in the Andes Mountain. That was also another book that is written about people that had to survive. They eat their own friends, that kind of thing. Read this book. I can't tell you enough how much this book put into perspective. I've been out in the woods and been hungry plenty of times, to the point where I was very, very hungry and I was losing muscle mass, but I never thought about eating anybody I was with. That's how desperate this book is. Highly recommended. It's called The Indifferent Stars Above by Daniel James Brown. He writes a very, very good first-person book where he's just narrating along the way and then follows the trail. At the end of the book, he actually tells you where he's following what she had done, obviously with modern technology, through traveling through the mosquito-infested Illinois, through the desert, through the mountain, through way down to the point of salvation, which was Johnson's farm. All right, guys, if you like this book and you like this kind of content, please like, subscribe, share, add the comments down below if you haven't read this book. I will put the links down below to my Amazon page. I highly recommend you read this book. Life-changing, guys. Absolutely life-changing. Thank you very much, guys. Keep reading. And as always, stay safe.